I was just so excited and so full of life and joy with this idea that, I'm actually collecting stories and sharing it, and I'm taking action myself in a way that I want to, and in a way that feels good to me. If you have a very specific viewership, and if you have an audience which different companies want access to, then you can make money from advertising. That's how the news makes money. If you think of newspapers, or even there are probably multiple ingredients to any form of success or mastery, and I think the two first ingredients are consistency and patience.
So, presenting to the world, Daniel Hartz. Daniel, welcome to the Climapreneur Show. You have presented to the world so many sustainability champions, and I feel honored to be presenting your story today. So, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Shweta, for having me on the show. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Daniel. So, Daniel, I want to actually start from, because, we are also a media company, and we are also sharing positive stories of grit, stories of resilience, stories of hope. And I know that building something like this is difficult. So I want to know from you that what was the most difficult part, or is the most difficult part of your journey of building sustainability champions?
I suppose the most challenging part at the beginning was really understanding our angle and how we wanted to talk about sustainability. Ultimately, Sustainability Champions is it's a growing media channel that focuses on, as you said, sharing stories of hope and resilience. I like that word grit as well. And really the thesis or the idea behind Sustainability Champions is to counterbalance the negative news about the environment in the media. There's just so much negativity. There's a lot of doom and gloom. And so Sustainability Champions is showing that actually there are people all over the world who are taking action and seeing these challenges and are focusing on solutions. So in order to actually find a way to position that in an easy to understand format that's fun, that's hopeful, that's engaging and educational, took a little bit of time. And now that we've found it, I think we've been enjoying the success of that, and really, hopefully, I think a lot of people are enjoying the content and feeling good and uplifted by it as well.
Yeah. So, Daniel, when you say that you're enjoying the success of that, I want to know from you that what does success mean to you?
So success, you can look at that question in so many different ways. We can look at success from a personal standpoint, as me as an individual. We can look at success from the point of view of, financial metrics. We can look at it from the point of view of the amount of value or impact that we're making. And I suppose within the context of this conversation, I look at it from the point of view of impact and value that we're bringing. And when I say success, what I particularly mean is sharing with many people. At the time of this recording, we have 122,000 followers on Instagram. These wonderful innovators and people who are working really hard to make a positive impact on the environment. And when I say success, what I'm specifically referring to is the comments that we receive from people who say, who tell us that they finally found a community of other people who are also working hard to protect and heal the planet. Sometimes, especially in sustainability, what I'm seeing is that people sometimes feel completely, I suppose, cut off from others, and they sometimes feel like they're the only ones who are taking action. But actually, that's not quite true. There's a lot of people all over the world, and so Sustainability Champions is showing that there's a community here, and if you are taking action, even if it's something small that you think may not be that consequential, there are others who are doing the same, and we want you to keep going.
And you very well said that, Daniel, this was one of the reasons I started Climapreneur, once I did my master's in climate change. Because, now when I talk to these people, there are such amazing stories. There was this one person who actually set up urine bank in the college. And just imagine the kind of social stigma that person has went through. Now, people today see that he has saved millions of liters of water. But to do that, there was different journey he went through. And like I was amazed at how did you do that. I think that is one of the most beautiful elements to me. And I like remember that one moment that we have had was when a listener just wrote a very sweet message that how one of the conversations really got her from her lows to her highs. So I want to know from you, Daniel, that what has been, the most gratifying moment, or a moment when you felt like that, hey, Daniel, this is for me. This is what I was meant to do.
I think the most, I wouldn't say it's one specific moment that is the most gratifying. It's multiple moments, sometimes multiple times a day. It's really a feeling of kind of joy and alignment that what I'm doing is, it just feels good. It feels right. And when I first started Sustainability Champions, it started as a very, very small, it was a podcast, and that was it. And I did my first recording, with my dad, and stepmom, and just talking about, the work that they do, because they live in the countryside. And, it was just so much fun to just hear this and have the opportunity to talk about it for an hour. And then the second podcast episode I did was with the senior manager of sustainability. She's now the director of sustainability at a large tech firm called VMware. And after I completed that recording, when I hit the record button to end it, I was just so excited and so full of life and joy with this idea that, I'm actually collecting stories and sharing it, and I'm taking action myself in a way that I want to, and in a way that feels good to me. And so, these types of moments just continue throughout the day and every week and every month. And it's now been 3 years. I started on January 1st, 2019. And it's been, 3 years. And just throughout that journey, there's just these constant little reminders of, this feels really good, and I'm really enjoying this. I'm having a great time. And that, to me, I think is the most gratifying, is just, I feel like I'm on the right journey, and I'm on the right path rather. And this journey is just so much fun.
And that feeling is incredible. Like, I can understand what you're saying, and like I totally second that. Also, Daniel, that sometimes, like walking on this path, especially I'm talking now about climate media, since you are someone who has built a beautiful platform, I would say. So this was one thing which I heard when I started out, that this is an NGO, this won't ever be a business, you can never make money out of it. And these are certain things which I now get, like, hear from small Instagram pages or small people who are actually starting up. What would you say that, do you think that there is even a business in the climate media space? Because I have heard this thing a lot, that this is an NGO, there's no business attached to it, you should probably look something else to say earn. So what are your thoughts on it?
I'm not sure that I actually agree with that. I think you can make it an NGO or a nonprofit if you choose, and there's nothing wrong with that. It really just depends on your approach and what you think is appropriate and what feels right for you. But I think, if you are looking to start a business and you are looking to actually get into climate media space in a for-profit manner, I think it's absolutely possible. And I think that it's, that there's a lot of space for it. If ultimately climate media, there's multiple ways to do it. I see Sustainability Champions as kind of a multimedia, I suppose, magazine, if you were to call it something, because we really just, we talk about a wide range of topics, and we're presenting various people and eventually topics and ideas and stories. But ultimately, a lot of media makes money on advertising. That's where a lot of it comes from, sponsorships. If you think of a magazine, like a traditional paper magazine, there's ads inside. And so if you have a very specific viewership, and if you have an audience which different companies want access to, then you can make money from advertising. That's how the news makes money. If you think of newspapers or even any news channel, there's ads, magazines, websites that have, again, ads, whether it's Google ads or affiliate links to Amazon. these are all legitimate sources of revenue, and that's how businesses in any sector that are media related make money. You can also branch out and start doing events. You can start doing courses. You can do consulting and all of that. What's amazing about media is because people in the media, journalists and everyone who's related to the media, they have such a wide understanding of what's going on. That's what we do, is we're always looking for stories everywhere. And so we're in a really interesting position because we don't get pigeonholed into focusing on one thing. I'm, as the founder of Sustainability Champions, sustainability is a very broad topic. So I think about agriculture and farming. I'm also interested in stories about renewable energy, which ranges from solar to wind to even nuclear. I'm thinking about direct carbon capture, where they're taking carbon out of the air and pumping it into the ground. I mean, these things are so wide. Even how can we find new ways to create cement and concrete that are more? All of this is interesting to me, and so when you have that much knowledge, you can really you can speak, you can teach. So yeah, I mean, it's a very long-winded answer to your question, but yes, I believe there's a lot of room for it to be for profit. I think the most important thing is to think about, first of all, why you're starting this business. And because if you understand that, then it will be really easy not really easy. It'll be easier to go through the challenging parts. It's a long journey, and
I think the point that you said, by just knowing your why, I think that is like, during tough times, knowing your why actually helps you bounce back. So I feel that is one other element to it. Also, Daniel, that what role has patience and consistency played in your journey towards building sustainability champions?
I'm laughing because I feel like those two words are ultimately there are probably multiple ingredients to any form of success or mastery, and I think the two first ingredients are consistency and patience. First of all, it's a never-ending journey. You can never actually get there. You can build a company and sell it and leave, and then you'll have to start something else eventually, or else you're just going to sit and stare at a wall. But consistency and patience, I think, are the most important thing. And consistency is important because if you show up every day, even if you spend only 60 seconds, like literally 1 minute, on building your business, and I mean building it, not not doing something that doesn't actually grow it, but if, let's say you're writing a blog post and you want it to be 2,000 words. If you write 1 word a day, it'll take you a really long time, but eventually you will actually complete the blog post. And that's what consistency does. If you think about any river that, like the Colorado River that built that created the Grand Canyon, that's consistency. Every day the water just keeps flowing, and there's a lot of patience there. That took probably millions of years to make, but eventually it gets there in the end. And so patience and consistency are, in my opinion, the root of and the foundation of any success in any journey.
Also, since this is what we read, and while we were doing some research, that since farming had a major role in motivating you to take sustainability champions, and since then, you have had so many people of this genre on your show, what do you think is the future of sustainable farming?
This is personally one of the areas that I'm most interested in. So I think agriculture is, well, first of all, people need to eat. So agriculture will always be a part of our lives, and it's not something that we eat every day, hopefully. And so sustainable agriculture, I think, is a major player in moving towards a sustainable future. So I think there's a few interesting things that are happening in agriculture. Number one is a movement towards more regenerative style farming. So that's where you really work with nature to farm. And I think it's brilliant because you see biodiversity going up on farms. The soil starts to heal. There's so much good that comes from it. And it turns out, even if you introduce, and I know this is a point of contention, but what I've been seeing is that even if you introduce farm animals like cows or sheep to the farm, it actually encourages growth and it can sequester more carbon than those animals emit. So that's one interesting area of regenerative farming, and I think they're also substantially more productive. So 1 acre of land on a regenerative farm makes much more food and different types of food than 1 acre of conventional farming. So I think that's a really important way to continue feeding an ever-growing population on the planet. There's other interesting things in terms of like indoor farming. So vertical farming, where you're actually building you go inside a large warehouse, for instance, and you build farms. They're basically greenhouses, but they're much more technologically advanced, and you can grow food right in the middle of the city. You can pick it an hour or two before it goes to the restaurant. And so the reason why that's so sustainable is because, especially if you're using renewable energy to power it, there's no travel, and the food is extremely fresh, and it's growing in ways that is basically ideal for the plant's growth. A third really interesting technological advance that's really moving quickly right now is cell-based meat. So this is real meat. It's not any sort of fake or vegetable-based proteins. It's real meat taken from the cells of animals. There's multiple ways to do it, but you basically grow meat in a culture, in a lab, and then you collect it and you can make a real meat hamburger, and it doesn't require the animal. So I think these are huge opportunities, all three of them. There's a lot of other areas for growth, but I think the agriculture sector produces so much carbon emissions. It also produces a lot of pollution from fertilizers and other inputs that if we're able to really move into a sustainable agricultural future, I think it'll solve so many issues on its own. And I think it's really one of the most important ways that we can live in harmony with nature.
I think that's pretty amazing, because I have had someone on this podcast who actually has a regenerative farm. And so she mentioned this thing that restoring soils can actually help us restore, like 5.5 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like, just imagine the kind of numbers they are. So that definitely, is an area of opportunity. Also, Dana, like, this is one thing, I don't know, like, someone was just asking me this thing that today, all these big organizations are shifting towards organic, regenerative, and these organizations definitely do have, well-established distribution channels. Obviously, that's a good thing, but in such a scenario, how can startups or, small businesses, small bootstrap businesses crack the code? Like, how can they reach the audience when they do not have a well-settled distribution channels?
So you're referring to how can a business actually deliver products?
Yeah. And particularly when they do not have like well-established distribution channels. If we talk about, say, if I have a small farm in the countryside, I'm like creating some products. So how can I reach the audience, my consumers?
So one thing that small farms, at least in the UK and the US do, and I would imagine this depends very much on the country where this is happening, but I can only speak from my limited experience in the UK and the US. What a lot of farmers do is two things. Number one is, especially if they're small, they go to farmers markets. So for instance, I'm in London, and there's a lot of farmers markets around London, and London's a pretty big city here, and so you have farmers who come in sometimes every single day to different parts of the city, because you have one farmers market in the north, in the north, next day it's in the northeast, and it just goes round and round and round. And so that's one thing farmers do, is they just drive in. It's hard work. I mean, it's really tough because you have to get there early in the morning, stay for a long time, then drive back. But it does work, and people certainly here in London and in my experience in California as well, people love farmers markets. It's such a fun day out. You spend a couple of hours. Sometimes they make it really fun for kids. They even have rides. It depends on the market, of course. But so that's one way, is basically bring it from a distribution point of view. Don't rely on anyone else other than yourself, and bring the food to a central place where there's a lot of people who want to buy it. Another thing that farmers also do here is they create a farm shop on the farm. And the reason they do that is because people sometimes are really interested in actually going to the farm itself and seeing where people are growing the food, what it looks like, actually communicating with the farmer, and it becomes part of a day out. This, I would imagine, is a bit more challenging because you really need to motivate people to go to your farm. So there has to be other reasons other than just fresh produce. So, whether it's building a hotel there or doing tours or lectures about the farm and how it works. But I don't think you need, a very complex or sophisticated distribution channel or system to get your food to people. Ultimately, what other people do is they set up like delivery like a delivery system for the nearby neighborhood. They just knock on doors or leave flyers and say, hey, if you want us to deliver like boxes of vegetables, seasonal fruits and vegetables, pay $20 a month, for instance, or whatever, and you'll get a box with $20 a week, let's say, and you get a box every week. Right. With stuff from the farm. And that's a really great way to do it. And then you just have a van that goes around and drops it off every Monday or whatever. So yeah, those are some ideas.
So that's pretty amazing. And my next question to you would be that, what do you think can motivate people and make them feel more confident while taking up, say, eco-entrepreneurship, or what I call as climapreneurship?
How do you mean by confident?
Confident in the sense, so these are the few things which I have all been listening from students or from youth, that, okay, so this is a big problem. Will my steps even make a difference? Or, how should I start? Is this even going to be a business? That is, again, one thing. So what do you think are the elements which will actually motivate someone to be on this path?
I think it comes back to knowing what's important to you, and to that idea of, why in the first place. Ask yourself, because if, when you start thinking about even my journey, I started with a podcast where I interviewed my dad and stepmom. And you could say at that very beginning, that first journey, well, you're not really doing anything. You're just talking, you're recording a call with your family. But this is very cliche, but a 1,000-mile journey starts with a single step. The point is that I started with that call, and then a second call, podcast recording, then a third, and then eventually it turned into 80. And in the meantime, we had started this Instagram thing, and every single time you take a step forward, what you realize, you learn more, and you would never be able to see any of that from where you were standing before. It's like going up in an elevator on a skyscraper. You can't possibly imagine what you'll see from the 10th floor when you're standing on the first floor. And when you get to the 10th floor, you can't imagine what's on the 20th floor until you get there. And the view keeps changing, and you realize more and more and more about what's important to you, what impact you want to make. And so sometimes you have to start in a place. You start and it doesn't look like anything is actually happening. But as you keep going, this comes back to your first question about consistency and patience. As you keep going and as you commit to it, and just take your time. There's a lot of talk about the making sure we hit our 2030 goal. And yes, we need to rush, and we need to move quickly, but it's better to, there's all sorts of phrases around this, better to measure twice, cut once, or the Navy SEALs say slow is smooth, smooth is fast. This idea of take your time, because it's much faster than rushing and making a bunch of mistakes and then having to go back. Yeah. So be patient. You don't need to, invent the next nuclear power plant that, does all of these things tomorrow. There's a lot of people working on this. Your job is to focus on what you're good at and focus on what you can control and focus on what you're passionate about. And when you do that, we all work together because everyone has different passions, different interests, different strengths. And it's basically it's a web, and it's like a quilt. There's a bunch of little pieces, and every piece has its place. So as long as you focus on what feels right to you, you will be making an impact, and you will be doing what's right for you, for us, and for the environment. And don't let anyone discourage you from taking the path that feels best for you. And that's not just about sustainability. That's anything.
I think I'm so glad that you said that, like I've always felt this thing that just imagine if everyone just, followed their skills and just incorporated climate action into it, the kind of revolution it would be, And I feel that it's just that we all imperfect pieces coming together in our own diverse ways. Someone could love painting, music, say electric. So it's just doing in our own ways. Also, Daniel, that since we were talking about discovering what you want to do, I want to know that how did you discover that you want to be into the media space?
I think for me, I've always had a wide variety of interests, and I guess I'm just I have a lot of curiosity about a lot of things, and I enjoy learning new things. And the reason I liked media, or it started really with the podcast. The reason I liked the podcast was because it allowed me to talk to so many different people from so many different spaces and sectors. So, and that's cool because I didn't need to just pigeonhole myself into, I'm only going to focus on agriculture, and anything outside that is more of, that's just interesting, but I'm not allowed to really spend, quote unquote, allowed to spend time on those things because I'm interested only in agriculture. And I didn't really want to just get stuck in that one space. So, or in any space. So instead of building kind of like a product business where, I'm going to be making this product that helps farmers do this or whatever it is, I figured that creating a media channel really will allow me to experience the entire sustainability field and all of the various industries within it. And I don't need to really worry about getting pigeonholed. And if some new technology comes out, I can learn about that and spend time learning about that. And at the same time, going back to other things that I like and that I think the audience knows. And so, personally, I just found it just so much fun to be able to talk about so many different things, go to all sorts of different types of events. And it's all related to what I'm doing, which is, learning about sustainability and talking about the great work that's being done in the field.
And the community that you have built, I would say building a community of over 100K, to be exact 122K on Instagram is not a one night thing. Like sometimes people might say, okay, it just happened overnight, but only you as a person know that the kind of nights, the kind of courage, the kind of the moments when you didn't feel like working and you felt, okay, no, let's just do this one post, let's just do this one recording. Those were those moments that really led you here today. So I want to know from you, Daniel, that what were the things that you today feel that you did right that really helped you build Sustainability Champions the way it is today?
I think one of the most important things, in addition to, like we said, that there's a lot of ingredients to the recipe, patience and consistency. I think that I did that, and I'm still doing that right. That's a big part. But the other thing is creating a team. I'm not the only one who's working on Sustainability Champions. I have an amazing team that is working really hard and who I believe sees the vision, understands the vision, and really, without my team, Sustainability Champions would not even be close to where it is right now. And I can say that confidently. And so it's really about surrounding yourself with people who you work well with, who you trust, who understand what you're going for, and who are also invested and passionate about either the topic or building the company. And so that investing in my team was one of the most, if not the most important decision I made for Sustainability Champions. And I think going back to what you were saying earlier about, you know, those days when it's really difficult and you don't want to do it. And I always thought, you know, oh, if I just start something I'm passionate about, it's going to be so easy always. And I'll just wake up and I'll be like, what do I want to do today? Don't even need to ask myself that question. I'm just going to do the thing I love. But actually it turns out, yes, I am very passionate about this and I love it. And when I look back on everything we've done and the future plans that I have, I'm so excited for it all. But that doesn't mean that there are days where I'm just like, I'm tired. I don't want to do this. You know, I just want to like sit and play, you know, Candy Crush or whatever it is. And we all go through that. And I think another decision that I made, which was right, and this took a couple of years to get there, was to take a break. Sometimes it's just so important to just stop and not think about it for a while, not think about your business. You have to go on holiday. You have to go on vacation, even if it just means staying at home and just not opening up your laptop to work for a little while. Yeah, I mean, it's just so crucial. Your mental health, your emotional health is number one. And because if you're not physically or emotionally or mentally able to give to your business, then you can't provide value. And the way you get that emotional, physical sometimes, and mental and spiritual strength is by resting. And so now meditation is a really important part of my day, because every day I realize I need to feel refreshed. But also, you know, every few months it's important to take a few days off. Every year I think it's important to take a couple weeks off. And it's easy to do during Christmas and the holiday season. And to me, it's maybe not the most helpful piece of advice, but it's what I realized most recently for me is the most important, is to take a break. And when we're constantly bombarded with negativity, or when you realize all the time just how much work there is to do, it can be really overwhelming. And so taking a break, taking a step back, and just having fun and, you know, enjoying your life while we're here is really important. And it makes you realize you also remember why you're doing what you're doing when you have time to spend with family, with friends, on your own, taking a walk in nature. All of these things come into clearer focus. And when you come back to work, you're refreshed and ready to go in 100%.
No, definitely. I know with me also, like, this sort of break really helps to, you know, reconnect with myself and sometimes just look towards the bigger picture that we sometimes, you know, might just miss in some daily no's or some daily, you know, little failures that we might achieve, and we might feel, okay, this is not working. Or for example, a particular podcast or a particular post doesn't get that many shares, that many downloads. Sometimes, you know, it feels like, okay, is this even going to make sense? But those breaks actually help us look towards the bigger picture.
It's very true.
So my final two questions to you would be, Daniel, that what are some of the opportunities that you see in the climate media space for any aspiring entrepreneurs or for youth to enter? Or let's say, what are some of the problem statements that you feel exist?
I think the biggest opportunities is really just niches. So Sustainability Champions is very broad, which has its pros and cons. The pros, as I was mentioning earlier, I don't need to pigeonhole myself. I can talk about whatever I want. I like that personally. But the cons are kind of the downside of that is that it's infinite. And so sometimes I don't know what should we talk about next, because sometimes I feel like, oh, we're talking about farming now. I really like that. That's really interesting. Let's talk about that more and more and more. But then I realize, well, this is Sustainability Champions. We're not like farming champions. So I need to actually move over here. And so, that requires a balance. But if you think about industry magazines, you know, like, I mean, we're talking about farming a lot. So there's going to be industry magazines about farming for farmers. I'm sure there's industry magazines about cars, about anything you could possibly think of. There's an industry magazine. And so for the media space, you can niche down on a specific sector within sustainability. So you could come up with a media channel that focuses specifically on renewable energy. You can come up with a media channel that focuses on regenerative agriculture or climate, like green financing. That's a huge opportunity. Yep. There's, as this whole sustainability and a lot of people still call it ESG, as it continues to grow, money is starting to really flow into this space. And so that's an interesting thing, is, talking about the investing side. So I don't think we're going to run out of space at all anytime in the near future. And in fact, in general, I just don't think you can ever run out of space. I think even in a really, really impacted sector where there's like 150 companies all doing the same thing, there's still space for someone else, because if you can find your unique angle, and if you can find your unique way, and if you're looking at all these 150 companies and you realize, they're still not doing this one thing, well, that's where you come in. And yeah, it's great that there's 150 competitors, because that means that that space is full of money, full of opportunity. The biggest red flag for any entrepreneur should be when you go into a space and you don't have a single competitor at all. In fact, when you're raising money and you're speaking to investors, one of the first questions they'll ask is, who are your competitors? And if you say no one, it's great. They'll say, I'm not interested in this opportunity, because if there's no opportunities, if there are no competitors, that means there's no opportunity. So don't worry about, not having enough space. Just going back to what I was saying earlier. If you have an interest that you want to talk about, that you want to write about, that you want to speak to different entrepreneurs about, whether it's, a podcast or, again, like a magazine or some sort of news channel, whatever it is, there is space, because it's okay to interview the same person on multiple channels. I mean, if you think about famous musicians or actors, or they're interviewed on multiple channels, and that's okay. Some people actually love to see the same actor speaking about the same movie on 5 different channels, because the questions are different, the approach is different, the conversation ends up being different. So don't worry about running out of space, or, if you see Sustainability Champions or the Climapreneur show and you think, oh, well, they're already doing it, so I can't do it. That's not true. Yeah. You can do it. There's going to be people who don't resonate with me or with you, Shweta, but they'll resonate with you, whoever's listening, because of the way that you talk. Maybe you're way funnier than I am, and people love that. And so they want to have almost like a comedy show. There you go. That's another way to do it. Make it a comedy show. Make it fun. Or it could be super serious. It doesn't matter. Like, you're unique, and your approach is different than mine, than Shweta's, than every single other person on the planet. And so whatever you choose to do, there is space. And yeah, maybe you can call us competitors, but I see us more as perhaps collaborators who focus on different ways of sharing the story and making sure that as many people as possible hear the important message about moving forward with sustainability.
I'm so glad that you said that. And I think also that there are, for some reasons, we call as, like human libraries, and I think we all are filled with, like, so, even you, me, and any other person, there are like so many experiences, so many learnings, and every time a new person interviews or a new person talks, he gets out a completely different side. So, like, there are some people who I really love, and I just go on Spotify and just search their name and literally listen to every podcast they have been on.
Exactly.
And every time I get to, see a different side, maybe the person says the same thing, but the kind of format, the kind of, the little things, I think that is what matters. And I'm like super like glad that you said that thing. And then, yes, we all bring our unique selves to the table. Also, Daniel, my last question to you is, are you proud of yourself? And what is the element that you love about yourself?
So I am very proud of myself, because this was starting Sustainability Champions, was a challenge for me. It required taking risks. It required kind of breaking some social barriers or some self-beliefs that I had, and so I'm very proud of myself for doing that. And I think within the context of this conversation, one thing that I really do love about myself is the fact that I'm willing to push beyond what I think is possible for me, and I'm willing to go out of the comfort zone, and I'm aware of when I have that element of fear because this is something new, something different. I've never done it before. What if I fail? And you get that negative spiral, and then you sort of feel the fear and do it anyway. And I'm not, brilliant at it. I'm not an expert, but I do it. And sometimes it's very, very small. It's I feel this barrier. I want to do something new. Okay, so let's start with something so tiny that I can't say no to it, and that way I get just a tiny little step in that direction. And again, going back to consistency and patience, and that little step makes me realize, actually, this isn't so bad. It's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's not so bad. And so then I take another step, and again, it's not as bad. It's not so bad, but it's a little bit uncomfortable. And you keep going, and before you know it, you're learning, you're growing, and things are building. And even when I make a mistake or when I fail, I always care. I like to write in my journal and think about, how can I do it better? And you realize, actually, failure is not fatal. It's okay. And so these are the kind of elements that I love about myself, is that I'm able to do that. And I love that process of growth, and really examining who I am and how I can become a better version of myself.
Incredible. And this, I just read this one thing on Instagram. Actually, someone posted this thing that when you are moving, like when you're swimming against the water currents, it might seem very difficult, but it is during that points when your core muscles are getting strengthened, and when the wave will be in your direction, you can just move faster.
That's very true.
So, I feel that that's there. And Daniel, thank you so much for doing what you do. You genuinely have no idea how much you inspire people. And, if I have to talk about myself, some days when I feel down, some days when I feel that, is it ever going to work for me on hard days, I look up to people like you. And I think to myself that, Shweta, you can do it.
Well, thank you.
So just keep doing what you're doing. And I know it's not an easy journey. It's not an overnight task. And I know that you have a long way to go, Daniel. So kudos to you. And thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you very much for the kind words, Shweta. And I appreciate being asked to be on the show. So thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Daniel.